Hi, thanks so much for tuning in. In this short video, I'm going to give an introduction for composition considerations specific to super macro underwater photography. All right, remember, there are some technical issues with super macro in terms of focus especially, but in some ways it's easier. There are fewer distractions, and that's what we're going to talk about today. After this video, I'm going to show some examples, some underwater pictures showing what I'm talking about. Now, in general, once we find a super macro subject, we have some decisions to make regarding composition. First of all, the camera position. And there's three aspects to this. There's proximity. How close we get to the subject is obviously going to determine the size of the subject and the content of the image. The closer you are, the less that's going to be in the image. Also, the angle of approach. Subjects can look so much different and sometimes more compelling from different angles. From here, from underneath, from that, different angles of approach. Okay, that's going to determine orientation of the subject. And finally, framing. The location of the subject within our image. Do we want it here, here, up here, over here? So, proximity, how close, which will determine the size and content, okay? Angle of approach, which will determine subject orientation, and framing, which will determine the location of the exact subject within the image. So that's it for composition. We have a few other things. Focus, all right? Now, we don't have to worry too much about backscatter and about our background, because that's not too much of a problem with super macro. There isn't much of a background, and there usually isn't much backscatter because there's so little water column, okay? But we have to decide exactly what do we want to be tack sharp in our image, all right? There is very little depth of field, and getting a good tack sharp image, focusing is one of the hardest things to do with super macro photography. Now, I usually use continuous autofocus, but then I'll often lock the focus and rock back and forth ever so much to try to get exactly what I want in tack sharp focus. We are the ones, the photographer, that determines the exact plane of focus. The camera doesn't necessarily know what we really want to focus on. With super macro, we have very limited depth of field. We usually use a small aperture, but we can even open it up more, and if we can focus on one little thing and then blur the rest of the image, okay? Now, also, strobes. We talked about TTL and a little bit in the last video, but with regard to composition, if I want to show detail, pattern, color, I'll usually keep my strobe straight ahead with or without a diffuser. To get good even lighting, I want to show the detail. If I, however, want to emphasize texture or topography or shadows, I will usually just use one strobe and then set it at an acute angle from one side, the other side, or from up above to show the shadows, okay? And then I usually will not use a diffuser because I want that harsh shadow. So that's kind of an introduction into composition considerations for super macro photography. We don't have to worry about a lot of the other things, multiple subjects, distractions, the background. We can focus on one thing, the subject. Now on the next video, I'm going to show some examples of composition with regard to super macro to show you what I was talking about. Thank you very much.